Hello, everybody. I have OG with me today, and we're going to be talking through the different phases of digital transformation. And I'm going to ask you to give us a quick introduction before we dive into questions, but also maybe kind of set the stage of what these three phases look like before we dive into detail of each one.
Yes. So, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is OG. It's how people call me. I have a very, very long history in the automation space, doing that for 15 years plus. Have been involved in all different aspects of automation, from the product development, product management, build buy type of situation, into the scaling, deploying, and as well into running very large footprint in large corporation. So yeah, this is a very, very interesting, very, very important topic, close to my heart. I have seen in the industry lately that we are about to exit the initial phase of any industry, kind of emerging new shiny object type of situation into something that is more mature. There's still a lot of work to be done to industrialize this environment. Obviously, the ecosystem of automation solution is growing by the day. There's a lot more complexity, but as well a lot more opportunity we see with the fact that we are adding a brain to the bot, with the fact that we are starting to get vision capability, language capability. So this ecosystem is becoming very exciting, but it's also about time that we industrialize, that we inject some best practices in order to manage this environment that is there to stay and is here to help human focus on what they do best, which is human stuff.
Wonderful, thank you. So, as we're going to talk through these three different phases today, the first one is the idea of the discovery phase and really focusing in on opportunities for bringing these technologies into your organization. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about maybe some of the different approaches that we can take to the discovery phase and some of the things that you're working towards today.
Yeah. So as a starting point here, we know that the discovery phase is taking a huge amount of effort and investment as well. People say that it's about 50% of the effort and the money that goes into the discovery phase. So the discovery phase is simply trying to understand what we want to automate, where we want to automate, trying to understand how we prioritize things, so creating a pipeline of opportunity. And historically, and we are still doing it today, this is a very manual type of activity where obviously we try to collect data when available, when the quality is acceptable, but we also do a lot of let's say mining, process discovery. We talk to a lot of people. So we are still here trying to automate by injecting a lot of human effort into that phase. I believe that as we start industrialize a lot more this environment, we are going to have a more off-the-shelf approach, right? So we now have thousands and thousands of bots running around the world across industries, across business processes, business function. All those use cases can then be leveraged to, I believe, provide a menu for client to know where to start from. So I give this analogy quite a lot, right? When you go to the restaurant, you need to have a menu to know what's available, what food you're gonna go order. Nowadays, we don't have a menu, so you have to go and talk to people around you, around the table next to you, to try to find out what's available. So I believe that as we evolve and we get a more mature discovery phase, obviously the tool will improve, the process discovery, the process mining will improve, but we are going to have a lot more an off-the-shelf approach with best practices, digitized use cases that can very easily be reapplied into a given environment because we know that it works in such an environment. I'm not saying that we are going to, move into a full standard. There's still a last mile customization that is required. There's still, a need to acknowledge that the client is unique, that the environment is unique, that we want to leverage the investment that was made and leverage the tools that are available. But my point here on that discovery phase is clearly that the amount of consulting that is required, the amount of actually discovery that is required is going to shrink a lot, and we are going to have something that will be a lot more simple, a lot more commoditized, a lot more, I would say, structured. And you are going to see a lot of use cases that will be leveraged across clients coming from the same industry for the same business processes.
That idea of the menu that helps people understand and conceptualize where these tools can come in, I think is something that's going to help a lot when it comes to democratization of these technologies. So when we take a look at what the next step is after you have that discovery phase, or maybe in the future we're able to pick from that menu and kind of order what we would like,
Yes.
we move into that build and deploy phase. And so can you share a little bit of how you envision this build and deploy phase changing and kind of maybe where we're at today and how that evolution will take place?
Yes. So this is also very interesting. Today, there's basically a wall between the discovery phase and the development phase, development, testing, deployment, the scaling phase. And that is a document called a PDD and SDD. So a document where you basically, a Word document very often, where you describe the requirement so that the people that have done the discovery phase can then hand over the requirement to the technical people who will be doing the deployment. So as you can see, as you can understand, this is a very inefficient way of doing it, right? Trying to move away from a fully digitized environment into writing, a document and then handing over to someone that has to very often reinvent the wheel. This is something that is very inefficient. We believe that that menu, those use cases that will help client identify what they need in the discovery phase, those use cases will be fully digitized. And they will be fully digitized, I would say, all the way down to the code that is required for a developer. So I am not saying here that everything will be, simple drag and drop. I am not saying that, they will be, let's say 80, 90, 90% of the development that is leveraged. What I am saying is if we have a fully digitized use case and we get rid of this Word document, this PDD, SDD, that is actually very inefficient, and we connect those use cases, the underlying task of those use cases, all the way down to the piece of code, the store from a given vendor, the GitHub repo, some objects, some libraries. I believe that we are going to increase the efficiency, reduce the development time, and at the same time, I would say increase the standardization level of those bots, right? So this is also something that we see happening a lot. When you ask a COE how they develop bots, the focus right now is to get the requirement, to develop the bot, and to basically come up with a working bot. The amount of leverage across the bots, the amount of standards, the amount of objects that are shared across the bot is typically not a focus today. So not only this is very important for the development, for the testing, for the scaling to optimize how we do that phase, it's also absolutely critical for the run and maintain phase. So my view here, just to close on that very important phase, is that we are going to allow people to quite easily leverage libraries and object and stores by having fully digitized use cases that are pointing to the right piece of code that needs to be leveraged, instead of right now allowing people to reinvent the wheel over and over again.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned this final phase of run and maintain and how critical that build and deploy component is as we move into this. But you have some very strong experience in your back pocket of what it's like to run and maintain a truly scaled intelligent automation practice. And we talk a lot about within this industry that nirvana of getting to the point where you've scaled and you're using these tools across the organization. But what are some of the challenges that you run into when you've got these truly scaled deployments, and how can we combat some of those challenges?
Yeah, so this is something that is not yet under the spotlight, because there's very few companies in the world that have achieved a very large footprint of bots, the very large automation footprints. What is really important to understand here is that once you reach a certain size, that footprint is actually becoming an operation by itself. Bots are failing because they are dependent on their environment, and the more bots you have, the more complexity in terms of technology, the more failure you are going to get. Very often, people do not even anticipate that, and they don't include that in their business case. But there's a huge risk of return on investment leakage in that phase if people don't understand that this is an operation. So here, what is really, really important to look at is, number one, to connect the dot with the scaling phase. So as I mentioned before, if you do a good job, if you have good practices, good standards, if you are leveraging objects, if you try to come up with the most reliable, the most robust option for the bot, how you integrate, for example, is a key point. Your footprint is going to be a lot more reliable, okay? And therefore, it's going to be a lot more manageable. Having said that, there is a need to understand that when you remove resources, human resources that are doing a set of tasks, and you introduce bots to allow those humans to do something else, you have to manage those bots, right? And looking at it as if it was an activity that can potentially be outsourced to some automation service provider. And really importantly, understand that we are going to need to take this very seriously. Today, people don't fully understand. As you mentioned, a large chunk of the industry is on the scaling phase, focusing on it. Let's remember that the average deal size for, let's say, RPA is still very small. The amount of bots that we are selling inside a given customer is still very small. Once we will reach thousands and thousands of bots running into a given environment, that phase is going to become probably the most important phase. It can make this overall automation initiative, digital transformation, a success, or it can break it if it's not managed correctly. The other aspect here that I want to add is that obviously I see two types of automation, and they will be handled differently, right? We talk about low code, no code. We talk about, a number of things. I see moving forward, I would say personal productivity type of automation that can easily be decentralized, and where the run and maintain will be decentralized as well, therefore fairly invisible. Think about, I'm trying to automate some activity I'm doing with some Microsoft product, right? As an example. So that's one type that is quite a good target for decentralized citizen development, low code, no code type of target. And the other aspect, which is starting to grow, is the platform approach, the enterprise approach. And this one will really become business critical to the customers. And on this one, we're going to have the right approach. There's a certain number of people looking at developing tools and, funny enough, bots to manage bots. So that phase is, for me, something that people that are really serious about automation need to start taking into account, because this is coming. This is going to become a big area for company, and we need to be well prepared.
Thank you so much for joining me today and talking through these approaches or the phases of transformation. And I want to encourage everybody to make sure that you're making your way over to OG's LinkedIn. He's got a little seal of approval that he's putting onto all sorts of intelligent automation stuff, so you know that it's the good stuff when you're out on LinkedIn looking for more information. And we're not done with our conversation either. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be releasing kind of some videos that help you put some parameters around this idea of what's on the menu for digital transformation across different industries. So make sure that you keep an eye out for that. But thank you again so much for joining me today, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.